Hey guys, how's it going? So the custom Mystic Summon update is coming right after the patch, and we have more information on how it works and everything, and so I kind of want to go through the whole thing because a lot of people don't fully understand how it functions. And I also wanted to talk about every single one of the ML5s and why I would go for them or not, and kind of the priority that a lot of people should go for, in my opinion. So, first of all, how this functions basically is you choose an ML5 you want to get, and then you choose an ML4 you want to get. You summon for them, and I believe that the artifacts and characters are completely random, something along those lines, that aren't the ML5 or ML4, completely RNG. And every time you summon, you get a coin. After you get 200 coins, you could just pity the character that you want. Or you could, go for them at 110. I don't recommend going for any of this unless you, for some reason, summoned extra. But the strategy is basically you want to summon as much as possible on the banner before you want to use any of the coins, right? Like, you don't want to pity as soon as possible and then start pulling more, right? You want to use it when you're fully done with the banner. But the strategy here is the coins carry over to when you swap the character. You can only swap one time, keep in mind. So you can only choose this character. Once you start pulling, it's locked in, and then you can swap once, apparently after 6 weeks of this banner being up total. Doesn't matter when you start, but 6 weeks after this banner's been up, the second round begins, where you can choose another ML5. So it doesn't matter if you start now or later. I would wait until near the very end to get as many mystics as possible. So if you choose Maid Chloe right here, and then you summon 200 times, and you don't get them, you could use this to pity them. But if you do get them, here's what's great, is you keep those coins. So you're basically towards that pity counter. So let's say you pull her in 50 pulls, well then if you pull 150 more times, you can use all those coins to pity the next character that you swap to. That's really high value. Technically, that could mean you summon 190 times, you get the character. Well, 10 more times you get another character, so that's a great deal, basically. So, at worst, this is a normal Mystic banner. At best, it could be a 2-for-1. So that's really, really good. So I think this banner is really high value, and you have 3 total months to summon. So until 7/21. So notice round 1 starts immediately. Round 2, you have to wait until 6/9 to start summoning on it. So you just want to hold on to your coins until then, basically. So this is kind of a long thing that's going to be going on. But yeah, so almost every ML5 and 4 are going to be on the banner. The only ML5s I believe that are not going to be on the banner are ML Flan and Lionheart Sirmia, I believe. You'll notice here the rates for 5-star and 4-star are actually the same as normal, and everything else is pretty much the same except, look, lots of 5-star characters, lots of 5-star artifacts, just all of them. So unfortunately they didn't increase the rates, and they also didn't lower the pity at all, so it's still going to be the same. So I think that pretty much explains how this works. I highly recommend you only pull in this banner when you have 10,000 mystics. If you summon before, let's say you used 5,000 mystics and you don't get the character, the pity doesn't carry over. This is a brand new, its own pity using the coins, and once the thing is over, after 7/21, I think you have a week to use those coins. After that, they're gone, and they don't go towards your pity or anything. So you have, 3 months. We're about to get 1,000 mystics for free from logging in over 7 days. The new Abyss thing has 1,000 mystics in it as well. So 2,000 on top of whatever you have from all of your Guild War, and also refreshing the secret shop. You should be able to get enough for this, assuming you already have some right now or you're at a decent place in the game. You can probably farm up a pretty good amount, I would say. I don't really buy mystics, but they accumulate pretty well from those sources for me. And so that's basically how this banner functions. Now, let's talk about the actual characters. So, ML Lilius actually is on the banner. I would put her as one of the highest priority picks. At the end of this video, by the way, I'm going to have a little tier list thing talking, just showing kind of what characters I would put where, pretty much, if you want to just skip that. So Conqueror Lilius is one of the #1 choices. This character is absolutely insane. I highly recommend them. They're good in PvP, they're good in PvE, they're good in RTA, they're good in Guild War, they're good in Arena. literally one of the best characters in the game, bar none, pretty much. Yeah, she has some ways to fight her in something like RTA, but overall, she's basically unstoppable, and she's banned nonstop. She's good at basically everything, really. Like, she's one of the top choices, for sure. 100% one of the best characters. Judge Kisei. I do not recommend people really go for this character, other than, I guess, waifu purposes, you know, if you have the skin and you really wanted her. She's a decent character at high level in some comps. She's used to reset stuff, which can be pretty useful in RTA, for instance. Like, sometimes resetting their team can completely cripple them. You reset, like, Emil Kowarik and stuff, for instance, and they're just not able to do a lot. She's kind of a one-and-done character where she does that and doesn't do much after. She's not, like, terrible. It's just, she's not really all that amazing compared to some of these others. When you want to get an ML5, you want to get someone who really impacts the game, right? Someone who's a game changer for you that, like, changes everything. I don't think she's really on that level. She's just an alright character to have. You cannot choose Lionheart Sarmia, unfortunately, on the banner. It's any character from the end of the banner going back 6 months. Any character that hasn't come out in that time, which she did, is choosable, unfortunately, because she's a really wanted character, I'd say, overall. So, Little Queen Charlotte. I use this character quite a bit. You have to have good support with her, characters like Amelia, Emil Kowarik, etc. But she's an incredibly strong character. She supports the team well with the 15% damage reduction from crits to them. She's great versus characters like Apocalypse Ravi and Fallen Cecilia. She pairs great with anyone who gives attack buff, or Emil Lilius, for instance. So she's just an all-around really solid character. I think that she's a pretty high up pick, but not nearly compared to some of these others. She's not a top pick, but she's like a pretty good pick if you have most of the top units already. She's pretty high up there then. Ambitious Taiwan. This character comes and goes with metas. The slower a meta is, the better he is, because he gets so much value out of basically constantly... Your opponent gets 30% less turns than you because they're slowed all the time and they're stunned. So they're losing tons of turns, you're spam soul burning. He doesn't really work as well in a super fast meta, what we're in right now, but he's just a hard control unit that completely wrecks them and makes them unable to do stuff, and he gets rid of some debuffs, which could be nice versus, you know, some characters like Solitaria nowadays, or just some other random debuffs, which is useful. But I don't recommend you go for him, really. He comes and goes, he's alright, but who knows if he's going to truly come back in the next meta. We don't really know what's going to happen with him. So, Belian. I would say that this is one of the top units to get. She's a premier anti-cleave unit, or just anti-Spectre Tenebria, anti-Landy, anti a lot of important units. If you have something like Injury, she's actually got a pretty favorable matchup versus characters like Apocalypse Ravi, or Crow, for instance. And she can really work teams down, very strong. She's basically permanently banned by cleavers, so in a way, having her versus cleave almost isn't useful sometimes, because they're always going to ban her. But she's a very, very powerful unit in general. I actually use her all the time. She can just work teams down. Counter set is really good versus high aggro, but Injury is very strong when you're just trying to work a team down, slowly burn them, and she carries a lot of matches in that way. She's definitely one of the top picks, definitely one of the highest rank ones. I would put her up there in the same category as characters like Emil Lilius, but I think Emil Lilius might be a little more useful in a lot of scenarios as a support than her. But she's still really, really top tier. She's changed the game. Last Rider Crow. He kind of has a lot less popularity, sort of similar to Ambitious Taiwan, I would say. I think he's okay, but he's just really not anything special anymore. The game has become so aggro that he can't really do anything in time. He's much more for a slower meta as well. He has some useful things, but he's very one note, where he basically just uses this and puts immunity on, and you draft him versus AoE. And right now, everything just kills you in like 2 seconds, so it's a little harder to slow the match down to where he's actually useful. He's okay against some characters like Solitaria, or, you know, SSB, for instance, but he's not really that high of a priority. I wouldn't really go for him. He's kind of similar to Ambitious Taiwan, I think. Specimen says, well, as somebody who has pulled 5 of this unit, I can say with authority that you should not go for him and he is completely worthless. Don't do it. Is he a fun unit? Yeah, he's fun, but he's completely useless in the grand scheme of things. Yeah, you can pair him with Silverblade Araminta or, you know, something like Solitaria, but I don't recommend it. Don't go for him. Sparadise Selene. She's one of the most fun units in the game by far. However, she's incredibly hard to use. She has like a million counters, like, you know, for instance, Carrot, SSB, Rimuru, any disable really that stops her from doing stuff. So many counters that she just has a hard time actually surviving, but she is so unbelievably fun when you can actually use her. Faithless Letica. One of my favorite units in the game. However, she's kind of fallen off. She's hard to use. She's not fast enough base speed to outspeed a lot of the fast characters. Politis halves this. She just has some trouble. The thing is, if you pick her in the right position as a last pick, she can work. It's just, she's not really all that great compared to so many characters nowadays. So I don't really recommend going for her. Sage Bale. I think that this unit is decent versus Cleave. You don't really see him anywhere else. He used to be a terror in slow matches and really frustrating, but he's pretty rare nowadays. I don't really recommend going for him either. Silverblade Araminta, she just got her buffs, and they changed nothing. I guess you could use her in some sort of Cleave stuff, but overall, not really worthwhile. She's really fun in Arena and Guild War, but she just completely gets wrecked in RTA overall, just because either she's picked perfectly and gets banned, or she's not picked well and she's awkward. Solitaria. I've been using this unit a lot on Effect Resist recently, fast and Effect Resist, and she's really good and really fun. She's not a unit you can pick in every scenario. She's really bad into Lionheart Cermia, and really bad into Rowana, and also hard debuffs completely destroy her. But when she goes unchecked, she can take over an entire match. I think she's a pretty high up pick overall, I would say. I think she's not on quite the level of like Belian and Emolilius, but I'd say she's right below as a very solid unit that is really fun to use as well. I think she's pretty good. I think she's a decent pick. DJ Vasar, don't go for him, right? He gets extra 15 speed in RTA. Great. You're not going to get as much use out of him as a lot of these other characters. He's definitely not an amazing cleanser. There's two other cleansers that are better that are also ML5s. I wouldn't recommend it. If you want to mess with the 15 extra speed in RTA for him, that's fine, but he's very weak. Maid Chloe, she's fallen off a bit because of some of the strip stuff that we see now, and also characters like Rimuru. She's about to get her skin in RTA, so I guess that means a banner will come up sometime later if you really want her. I don't think she's super worth it. She's an okay unit, for sure, but she just doesn't do quite as much as a character like Emil Quirk, for instance, that we'll talk about later, so I don't recommend her as much. She's decent, but she's not on the same level of support that he is. Whirl of Light. This is a character people ask for buffs for a lot, but the thing is, when the meta's fast, she's very weak, because she's too slow to actually be able to do too much, and she can only target one person. But when the meta's slow, she's actually really strong, and becomes a very powerful character and very frustrating to deal with. I think that this character is decent, not really one of the super high up picks, but she's a decent character to have. She has a great skin, that's for sure, but I wouldn't go for her compared to a lot of these other characters unless you really like them. Apocalypse Ravi, this is one of the top picks, up there with Belian and Emolilius. One of the best characters in the game. Even in PvE, she's decent as just like a frontline tank, really, but in PvP, one of the best bruisers ever. Just good in so many scenarios. She's not an unbeatable character. You can fight her with all sorts of different stuff and team comps, but she's very hard to deal with, and her S3, you have to play around so hard that it can make a match much more difficult than it should be. Just a top tier damage dealer and bruiser, for sure. 100%. She's one of the characters I recommend going for. Dark Corvus, don't get this guy. He just got his buff. He's okay in Guild Wars, but you don't even really need him in Guild Wars anymore, and that's kind of it. He's not really used anywhere else. He's kind of just a whatever character. I really don't recommend it. Designer Lilibet, one of the best cleansers in the game. She's incredibly good versus Cleave or aggro, because she's a damage dealer that also cuts, so you know, if you get defense broken, she can cleanse the team before you actually get wrecked. And she's just really good versus aggro, or in aggro if you really need a cleanser, I would say. I use her all the time. Pretty strong unit. I would put her below the top tier of units. I think she's very strong, but she's not a unit that you just pick in every single match, because, you know, if you pick her in bad scenarios, you kind of have a dead pick that only cleanses once, while a character like Emil Queric, you can get a lot more mileage out of him in a longer fight for sure. And she can also be killed easier than a character like that. So very strong, but a little bit more situational than some of these others. Emil Ken, do not recommend at all. He has a million counters, he's weak, he requires insane gear to actually work. You're not really going to get anything out of him. I've tried to use him a bunch. He's fun, but he's not great. He can work in Guild War and Arena a bit though, when you use him right, which is fun. Emil Queric, one of the best characters in the game. A godlike support on the level of Emil Lilius. I would say maybe she's a little bit higher up though, in some ways. He's not as good in PvE for sure as her, and in PvP he's amazing in RTA and Arena. In Guild Wars not as much as a character like Emil Lilius. By far one of the most powerful characters in the game. Some people say that his reputation is a little exaggerated. However, I don't agree at all. I think he actually can completely change your playstyle just by owning him. You can be a lot more aggressive or defensive with certain teams. He can completely change matches. This ability is insane. This ability is insane. Even his S1 is a pretty good ability. Overall, one of the best characters in the game for PvP. He's the best cleanser for sure. Up there, I would say our designer a little bit is a really good cleanser, and Amelia is a really good cleanser, and then he's kind of the peak, I would say. And he can be used aggressively or against aggressive teams, just all around very strong. The only thing that beats him is cleave, and I guess resets from characters like Judge Kisei or regular Kisei, something along those lines. Strays. He's a god of hunts. He can be used to one-shot basically every single hunt. He's great for Azumanic and KD's one-shots as well. In PvP, he can be used as a late pick. He's an alright character to have. He's really nice to have, I guess, for PvP as a late pick when your opponent doesn't have many speed characters and you pick him and he's fast and he'll just take something out, or you have a character like Amelia on your team to push him up. But he's not used as much in those cases. He can work in Guild War and Arena, I suppose. But hunts is where he's still retained his value, and he's a god for doing that if you're trying to one-shot a bunch of hunts. He does require good gear for some of them, though. Fallen Cecilia. What can I say? She's the best tank in the game, pretty much. Nowadays, you don't see as much C-Armin, but you do see T-Crozet a lot, but she is pretty much the premier tank. Amazing versus aggro and cleave, or even in normal matches, she's constantly putting the shield up. She gives more upfront mitigation than any other character in the game. Her only real counter is Operator Sigrid, which can really hard punish you. Stuff like Angel of Light can be really good versus her, but I wouldn't say it counters you as hard as something like Operator Sigrid. This character, I think, is one of the top tier characters that people should probably go for, but I might put her a little bit lower than some of the characters like Emil Lilius. She's top tier, hasn't been changed in a long time, the best tank, but some of these other supports are really, really good too. Arbiter Vildred, he's a good character to have, but he's really fallen off. You see him only a little bit in like really aggressive teams, or when the opponent has a really squishy team that you just kind of want to run down, or possibly sometimes versus cleave, especially if it's a degen RB that's a little bit tanky, maybe on counter. He's overall not used a ton though. He's a great dog walker, but he's just not a huge pick. When people start the game, I always recommend they go Spectre Tenebria over him, because she just is good the entirety of the game at all points and in almost all content, while he has kind of lost a lot of his value nowadays. There's too many characters that are decent against him, and teams can survive against him way better than they could before. So I don't recommend him as much as some of these. Closer Charles. If you're trying to be aggro or cleave, I think he's a pretty darn good unit. He's not like one of the top tier ones, but I recently got him. I've been having a lot of fun with him. I'm actually going to be building some cleave stuff to use him in, and I think he's a very strong character, but he's just not as universal as a lot of these other ones. But if you are a big aggro cleave player, you might consider picking him up. He hits like a truck, and he pushes the team and buffs them. He's just really fun. He's really, really enjoyable, even though he's so simple. And I wouldn't put him at the very top, but he's nice. Remnant Violet. People always ask for buffs on this unit. However, people have been using him for a long, long time. Even now, people still use him. He has like a million counters, and you can still use this guy. that shows that he's still a pretty damn good unit. He's like a cockroach. No matter how many characters that come out, and believe me, we've had a whole slew of characters that have been coming out non-stop that counter him. And yet he's still a good 4th, 5th pick, and he's actually very strong at it too. You have to pick him a little bit smarter than before with each new release. You have to pick him smarter, basically. But he's still a solid character. He's very fun. He's fun in Arena and Guild Wars, and in RTA he's a decent pick as well. He's just not a character that you pick at the very beginning. So he's not like one of the most top tier ones, but he's decent enough for me to say he's an alright pick to go for. Bravo Tessaria. His character is pretty good, but here's the big issue. Everything counters her in the meta right now. I just don't really recommend people go for her because she gets hard countered by Unbuffable and Silence and stuff like that. Characters like Peyra and Angel of Light can just make it so she doesn't get her immortality, or they silence her completely. And the cleansers in the game just remove her entire purpose because Emil Kawaric or Designer Lilibet just ruined this entire ability, so there was no point in even picking her. So, kind of ruins that, right? Operator Sigrid. She's a very good character, mostly used versus Opsig. She can kill characters like Hua Young, but you usually need attack buff or they have 0 mitigation. She's very strong, but she's just so situational. She's not as good of a pick as some of these others. But when she's used correctly, she's basically a force ban almost every time I see her picked. Because when she's picked, it's usually when you have something like FCC and you're just like, well, if I don't ban her, she's going to kill something and buff her team. I have to get rid of her. You cannot choose Pirate Captain Flan on it. Archdemon Mercedes is a very good character, but you see her a lot less right now. Some stuff is a little bit too aggressive for her to work as well, but she can still RNG win. A character like Hua Young just instantly kills her, which is a huge weakness. A character like Reamer is decent against her. Some of the cleansers are very powerful against her, like Emil Kawaric, so you don't really see her as often as you may have before. But she's still a very good character. You can still use her in teams and protect her well, and she can just auto-win games. Sometimes you just get lucky and you automatically win, right? So she can definitely work in protective comps, especially stuff like maybe T-Crozet, etc. Emil Kawaric, Emil Lilius all pair really well with her. But she's just not as good as some of the top picks. Spectre Tenebria, one of the best DPS in the game, still used all the time. I think everyone should have started the game with her, but let's say you don't know. Let's say you don't own this character. I think she's a pretty decent pick to go for. She's not one of the most OP units, but she's up there. Like, I would put her right below the most top tier units to go for off of this banner, just because she's so universal. She's amazing in PvE. She's amazing in PvP. All PvP, by the way, and most PvE as well. Like, she's the Abyss Queen. Just a very strong unit overall. She's also in the coin shop right now if you want to go for her. Top Maluka, I don't recommend anyone go for her. She's my favorite character in the game, but she's kind of power crept, it feels like, by some of these units such as Milim and stuff, and even Milim's not used all that much right now. You would need insane gear to make this character actually function. She kind of just needs a change to really be able to work. Very fun, but there's so many characters that are built the same way as her that can function better at the moment that I don't recommend it. Blood Moon Haste, I don't recommend him either. Yeah, he's good versus a few revives, but there's not really many revivers right now in the game, and every time he's picked, the match turns into a 50-50 of, are they banning Emil Haste? Well, maybe you ban the reviver, but what if they're not? And then both players are just thinking, well, should I ban Emil Haste or the reviver or not? And it just becomes kind of a mess, and even then, he's just not really great at the moment. Doesn't really do a whole lot. He's probably going to get buffed at some point, I would imagine. So those are all the ML5s. And for ML4, I would probably say Angel of Light and T-Crozet are two of the top picks. They're both amazing characters. But let me also bring this up. I made this little tier list thing, just for shorthand, basically. If you want to take a look at it, I would say these are the absolute best characters. I put Spectre Tenebria, I'd put her a little bit lower, possibly. Maybe right around here, but she's like, if you have these characters, then I would strongly consider going for her. I'd maybe put her at the very back here. This isn't in order, but I think these 5 characters here are probably the tip-top overall. I think these are just really strong overall characters, depending on your playstyle. I think they can be really good. then these characters, they're decent, but they're not really the ones you want to super go for. Like, they're pretty strong overall. Actually, I would probably put Ruel right here, I think, because Ruel's a character that I imagine would come back, and I still see her every once in a while, actually, too, versus certain teams. These characters, however, I'm not so sure about. Maybe I would put Amaryllis here as well. Or, I mean, not Amaryllis, whoops, Maid Chloe here as well. And as for these units, I think I'd probably keep them where they are. They're much more situational, not as universal. These are more characters that you can pick a lot more easy, and especially into the meta, or just have a niche that doesn't get filled by anything else, or just really strong in general. I wouldn't go for any of these characters. I think they're characters that need either buffs or just total reworks, and just all around don't really have much place in the game at the moment. I think they're characters that, you know, maybe you could pop it in Guild War or Arena or something, but you're not going to get a whole lot out of it. These two characters you unfortunately can't choose, but overall I would say those are my recommendations for the characters that I would go for, and that's how the Mystic Banners work. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below, you know? And if you like this, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I hope to see you guys next time. Thanks a bunch for watching.